United Nations World Economic Situation and Prospects report for 2024 has stated that Nigeria's increasing public debt, persistent inflation, as well as its rising cost of living pose serious risks to the country's economic growth this year. Nigeria currently has an inflation rate of 28.2% and as of Q2 2024 had a public debt of 87.38 trillion naira. That's from 49.85 trillion naira in Q1. According to the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, NBS, the UN report also projected a slight increase in Nigeria's growth rate from 2.9% in 2023 to 3.1% in 2024. The WESP is a report produced by the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, UNDESA, in partnership with the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, and the 5 United Nations Regional Commissions. According to the document, policy reforms enacted by the government of Nigeria in 2023, especially in the hydrocarbon sector, contributed to a moderate improvement in the country's growth prospects for 2024, with a 3.1% gross domestic product growth forecast. Okay.
So one thing is certain, we can't deceive ourselves. Nigeria is in dire economic straits. Most of this exacerbated by many factors, both external and internal. External, the circumstances of the world, wars here and there. Internal, not well thought through decisions. Very hasty subsidy removal and trying to sort of like adjust the exchange and devaluation of the currency. Also, very terrible economic decisions being made across board and not being able to solve the problem speedily of our economic malaise. In all fairness, at least, we celebrate them for paying some money to the airlines. Part of the money is owed. But there's been a general economic malaise coupled with various allegations of corruption and mismanagement and misappropriation like we just talked about. And that's why inflation has inched up to over 28%. I'm sure when we see the numbers for December, it will be definitely, KPMG will have been right because of the percentile at which it grows. And we've not been able to stem inflation. We've raised rates. We've not even done monetary policy meetings at a point. And that continues. We are having that, we're not having economic growth, we're having a proper stagflation. There are no jobs, no growth prospects, very low. Population growth high, economic growth low. So we have a cocktail of issues. But how do we meander through this cocktail of issues? Number one, leadership and taking forthright decision and being transparent with the people and letting them know what is going on. You can, as a government, not tell the people the truth about the subsidy. Are you paying subsidies or not? Even if it's a smidgen you're paying, let the people know that you're paying. Also, accountability in terms of government spending and governance. We all saw the amount allocated to the National Assembly. We're talking about a terrible economic situation. National Assembly lawmakers are buying SUVs for 160 million. Bob Marley sang the song. He says, "Them belly full and me hungry. An hungry man is an angry man." The National Assembly members are feeding fat, them belly full, and the Nigerian people are hungry. You keep telling the people to cut their coat according to their cloth, but you are not taking those, you're not making those sacrifices. So we have a system where there is a need for leadership. What should President Tinubu do? Stimulate growth, helping a lot of the SMEs. How do you do that? Catering to sectors of the economy that need to be catered to. Stopping government bureaucracy, opening the economy even more. Tackling insecurity that can bring back investor confidence. I know all of these things might take a while, but if we do them speedily and the people see leadership, then they can follow it. And that's why this case of Betta had better been investigated quickly. Because the same foreign investors that want to come to your country are watching things like this. And that's how they'll know if the government is serious or not. So there is nothing in this report that we do not know already. Inflation is a risk to 2024. We knew that. We knew the inflation was unbelievable. Although we knew that surge started from the last administration, but this administration, the decision it took, had biting implications of inflation. And we are still taking more debt. From 87 trillion now, we hear the debt is getting up to 100 trillion or even more than that. So we need to think deeply. And what will help this country is leadership. Get to work, Mr. President. This country is in your hands. It's a new year.
So, I mean, it's no news that last year economically for Nigeria was quite tough. We had multiple problems, and that was one of the things that when the campaign season was on, a number of questions asked to potential leaders, understanding that the country was in dire straits when it came to the economy, and of course issues like security, which also ties into economy, and how the president would tackle these issues. Some of the things, I mean, we had the Naira redesign policy, which put a lot of pressure on availability of Naira, obviously causing scarcity. Then on a resumption of office, the president announced the removal of fuel subsidy, its attendant effect on the already terrible situation in terms of the living conditions and the quality and the rise in cost of living. And then we also had, of course, high unemployment rate, food inflation at over 30%. And from this report from the United Nations, they also highlighted the fact that investment, or foreign investment, was at an 11-year low, with a further decrease in Q3 of last year. And so these are some of the things that the current administration would have to grapple with. We've had a number of analysis around how we can come out of what has been an economic dungeon and at least begin to emerge. On the positive side from this report, I must mention that they said, according to this report, that some of the tough policy reforms have given Nigeria a GDP growth prospect, a better one, even though slight in terms of margin, but at least it's still good news in terms of a 3% GDP growth rate. The UN and World Bank, IMF have not hidden the fact that their stance when it comes to fuel subsidy removal and the fact that it's one of the indicators or one of the markers to strengthen the economy. They did, however, and I think we emphasized this a number of times, talk about the fact that if fuel subsidy must be removed, then there must be safety nets provided to cushion the effect of the removal of fuel subsidy so that the citizens do not suffer severely. Now, this is where the criticism comes from, especially of the policy. Great, in terms of, there's no doubt about it that it was criminal, there were a lot of issues around transparency and lack of corruption in terms of racketeering when it comes to subsidy. However, the case had always been, since the announcement of the removal, what the government plans or what their plan was to cushion the effect and provide a safety net so that at least people are still able to live a moderate quality of life until things stabilize a bit. The president has talked about a number of times everyone coming to having to make sacrifices and the likes. However, when we hear issues like 585 million naira going into private accounts, then you wonder if this administration is putting their money where their mouth is, in terms of when we ask people to tighten their belts, then we must see that across all boards. So they're criticized, or at least when it comes to the area of safety net, cushioning the effects, that hasn't been well implemented, and that's probably why it's exacerbated the experience for many Nigerians in the area of the effect of fuel subsidy removal. When it comes to foreign investment, we've had a robust conversation around that. The UN didn't need to release a report to let us know that we've had quite a challenge in the area of foreign direct investment. And if you're going to look at showing up, in terms of liquidity, especially for foreign exchange, we must look to foreign investment, and this is something that we have seen a consistent reduction over the years. We looked at the areas that the government must take note of. Number one is security. And in the past few weeks, we have championed the cause of security, talked about the lack of security in certain areas like the Middle Belt, in fact, across different regions in Nigeria. And that no matter how much you announce the fact that Nigeria is open for business, which we agree with, we want you to come with your business, the government must also show the body language that we are indeed ready for business by tackling very decisively and very strongly the issue of insecurity. No one will bring their money when there's instability, especially in the area of security. Something else that was highlighted was a lack of enabling environment for businesses. I must give kudos to the last administration and the Office of the Presidential Enabling Business, Business Environment Council, PEBEC, and led by Dr. Jumoke Odowole. They did quite excellently in the last administration in the difficult terrain of making the business environment a bit more conducive. However, there must be more. There are multiple agencies when it comes to this, and if you look deeply into the activities of the Enabling Business Secretariat, you would see that when it comes to even things like taxes, customs, multiple taxation, bringing people together, the president must continue to do this work to ensure that businesses thrive, and we don't see divestments, not just from international organizations, but even businesses within Nigeria closing shop because the environment or the business environment is too toxic, it's too tough for businesses to thrive. These are areas that this administration must look into. We also looked at the issue of inflation, and Rufai, you rightly mentioned it. There was quite a bit of buzz around who would become the next CBN governor, because that role very critical to maintaining, to stabilizing at least economic activities, especially in the area of inflation, the MPC, and different meetings like that. But unfortunately, it seems almost like he's had quite a slow start to inspiring confidence in the trajectory of the economic realities of Nigeria, and that's another area that must be looked into, alongside with the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, to stimulate the Nigerian economy again, so that at least we can come out of the doldrums of what the last administration had put us into. So these are very pertinent conversations that must be had. Again, the UN has just highlighted what is already obvious and what we've talked about a number of times. And I'm glad that we have Mr. Paul Alaji joining us later on to discuss a few things around the budget and, of course, the economy. So perhaps we'll delve in deeper into that conversation. But, very grateful that this has been highlighted this morning. But the first thing I must mention is that it wasn't all bad news. The first thing is that policy reform by this administration was praised for helping Nigeria have a better projection in terms of the GDP, which is at 3.1%, so that's a pass mark. But then the way it was implemented and how it was handled and other critical things that are currently plaguing the economy must be looked into by this administration. And we're not going to cut you any slack, because the president did say that he knew what he was coming into, he knew what he was getting into, he knew how bad the situation was and was ready to take it on. So bring it on, Mr. President. We'll continue to hold you to account until we begin to see some positivity, especially in the Nigerian economy.